Hey everybody, Jason here from AV Pro Edge and Murideo. Today we're going to be doing part 4 of our 4-part ISF series here with Joel Silver. How you doing, Joel?
Good afternoon. We're doing great here. Sequestered down in Florida and getting a lot done. It's been interesting.
Good, great. So today's session is going to be really interesting and really fun. We wanted to talk a little bit about screen sizes of the future, and we're starting to see now just massive screen sizes, which really opens up the possibility to do all kinds of cool custom things like having a wall-sized TV. So we wanted to spend some time today kind of, going a little bit down memory lane and looking at some old products that we've both encountered in the past, and just talk about what we're going to be seeing in the future as far as screen sizes and resolutions and aspect ratios and all kinds of cool things like that.
Well, we've been playing with the big things for a long time. The good thing is now big things are affordable and they go in regular rooms. In the old days,
Right.
Unaffordable, and you had to get far enough away from them because the resolution was terrible for big screens.
So Joel, I have a whole bunch of different things here that we can look at. I've got a couple of slides and lots of pictures. So you tell me, where do you want to start? What do you want to look at first?
Well, the first big experience we had a while ago, let's start with a picture. You should have something of a Panasonic VX300 103-inch with a young lady sitting in front of it at the launch of the product.
Okay.
And that was radical in its day, 103-inch panel, 500 some odd pounds. Oh, there we go. That's a bigger screen. That's a Jumbotron. There we go. That was Jumbotron out of Petco Park. A terrible looking big screen. This was potentially a great looking big screen. This was a series that was done for Panasonic Professional, not a consumer product. And it had a studio mode, so it could be used for post-production where it was aimed. They had 3 generations of them. Each one got darker blacks, higher contrast, better color, and the VX300 you're looking at here was a very simple $80,000 TV set in the 90s.
Yeah.
Now that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem was the 500 some odd pounds. Probably the most impressive television demo I've ever seen in my life was putting this up on a stand in a trade show.
Oh yeah, but that was fun.
Came in a road case. Actually, it was a 1-person 10-minute job. You opened up the top of the road case on piano hinges. You bared the TV. You bolted the road case to the booth wall. They will roll the bearings on the bottom of the roller case and roll the bearings on the wall of the TV set. When you bolted it, the tracks lined up. You took one hand, you slid the 500-pound panel onto the middle of the wall.
Oh man.
You locked it with one locking Allen nut. So that was the best engineering I've ever seen in a road case.
That's cool. There was
road case costs as much as the TV.
There's another one that I was we were kind of getting ready for today. I was kind of going through some old pictures myself and came across this one. You probably remember.
Oh yeah.
It was another big plasma.
That was their 150.
Yep.
It was $500,000 custom order, and it was 4K because it was 4 panels badly welded together. Anything in the way of a bright seam, you could see the seams. So I only had seen one of them in America at Panasonic headquarters, New Jersey, and it was a statement product. Then I ended up working in Dubai, and I saw about 12 of them in every house.
Yeah, Dubai, yeah, sure.
Oh, this was in Emirates Hills, which looked kind of like a Florida estate. Everything was lush and beautiful, palm trees, and try and do that in the desert at any kind of budget. So we saw the watering bills for some of the homes. It was more than my mortgage. But this was a statement product. The reality of this, commercial display for signs.
Oh, sure.
The other one became boardrooms, post-production houses. Let's go back to that 103 because it was a stunning display. This actually was the team that had worked on Pioneer for a while. Phenomenal engineering group. The EOTF on this was right on the money, where the Pioneer actually did play some games in the darks to make the blacks look blacker. This actually looked like a broadcast monitor.
That's cool.
It was the interpixel spacing, called the Moyle on a Panasonic plasma, was huge. The space between the active picture elements was large enough for in any normal oversized room, all you saw was pixels on this TV set.
Yeah, did it look like you were looking through like a screen door or something almost if you sat really
It
close?
was pixel vision, and but you put it in a 55-foot living room
Yeah,
where
exactly.
a 65-inch set would look like a 27-inch set in that room. You put it in a 65-inch space, put a 103 in there, and it looked balanced.
Yeah.
And you were 25 feet away from it, so it looked fine, but it was an acceptable screen size in a mansion. And
What?
I will tell you, there's still a number of them up and down Palm Beach, Manalapan, Jupiter
Oh
Island,
yeah.
Hope Sound, right here in Florida. Tons of them.
I wonder how many of those went into like a condo or something on the beach, and then the roof went on, and now they can't get the TV out. There's probably a few of those floating around.
Problematic. We did have 4 of them sold into Trump Plaza, and
Wow.
they couldn't get them in the elevator.
Of course,
That was
yeah.
heartbreak for a deal. He had 4 of them sold. He had to settle for 85 inches because the freight elevator wouldn't take
Oh
it. So,
man,
but
oh man.
the weight was a problem. The cost was a problem. That was easy. But when we started putting these in urban environments and realistic size apartments, and these were not realistic priced apartments, they were just realistic size apartments.
Sure.
When you got a reasonable distance from them, they were unwatchable.
Yeah.
And it was strange because, we were looking at things here that puzzled us. We were far enough away on test patterns where we didn't see the pixels,
Hmm.
but we started watching 1080i, normal everyday 720p,
Right.
facts were in our faces. We couldn't tolerate it, and very few people could accept it. It was not a good system. So there was something going on visually that we took years to learn, but this was only acceptable if you had a huge room, at which point you lost the experience. Because what I was looking for with this TV set wasn't high res, was high involvement. Because
Right.
when you tack on dynamic range, you definitely get the impact. You tack on color, you get the impact. But the only way you really get the feeling of involvement in the movie is a large screen. That's where IMAX set the world straight with the original launches of the original IMAX movies. They were phenomenal. And we learned from these things that you got involved in the IMAX world. And I still remember one of the earliest ones to fly when we had 2 things happen. They had a balloon that was approaching a church spire. And everyone in the audience like ducked and went, oh, because you felt like you were going to hit it. And it
Yeah.
just hit it. But they had a stunt pilot to put an IMAX camera in a biplane,
Hmm.
performance biplane, and did zips and twirls and everything and drove everyone nuts. And actually, when he went to see the movie, he got ill.
Oh,
He
too
couldn't
much.
handle, well, he couldn't handle the scene without the seat of the pants G-force.
Hmm.
He was used to seeing it for real, but he felt it. So when he saw the twists and turns and rolls and barrel rolls, all these things without any gravitational pull,
Hmm.
he got ill. So it's very funny. We all loved it. He got ill from it, so it was very funny to begin with. But
I
at 103 taught us things. It was frighteningly difficult to install. In the USA, Panasonic did a site inspection for
mhm.
safety. This is not something you want falling on a child. So in Puerto Rico, we actually had someone crack some cinder blocks. We only realized that when we saw a hairline crack in the sheetrock. We looked outside and saw it wasn't the sheetrock, it was a cinder block. They had to do
Oh,
steel reinforcements after they repaired the house. So this was the first attempt at big screen in the home, and it was with mixed results. Not as
I
successful, never.
I thought you'd get a kick out of this. This was from what Google says at least. This was the first ever mass-produced television, the Baird, one of the Baird models with
Mm-hmm.
what is that,
John
a two
Logie.
inch? Was that a 2 inch screen over here on the side?
I don't know the size of it, but by the time we got to 1939, we were rocking and rolling at 9 inches.
Oh yeah, for sure. What are some of the early? I remember just going to like Circuit City with my dad when I was a kid and seeing like, back then a 60-inch or a 65-inch TV was just an absolute monster. And nowadays a 65 is like kind of the normal. Where
Well,
did you start to see that?
65 is a commodity scene. For us, it was
Yeah.
getting into CRT to 35 and 37 inches.
Hmm.
That was the big screen, and the weight was intimidating. We
Right.
did see a Trinitron 45-inch,
Hmm.
which they made limited productions of. And one of the engineers actually was going to take it to his apartment in New York City in between shows.
Yeah.
And being he was smarter than the average bear, he actually did some load studies on the wood floors. And it seems out that amount of weight and that few square feet would not let it remain on the 4th floor.
Sure. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
You need a concrete floor for that. The load would pierce a normal everyday wood floor. It was just
Right.
ridiculously heavy. I mean, that was hydraulics lifted around. That was never actually a real product.
Sure,
But,
sure.
once we got into the PDPs, we started to get into large things. And the Nagasaki plant for Panasonic knocked out those 103s in volume. It
Hmm.
was a very successful commercial product. And in mega mansions, normal everyday TV. It
Sure.
just looked right on the wall. So
Yeah.
our experience there was intriguing. I've still got, a few dozen of them I see from time to time, and these people all want new ones. There are no 103s, and they don't want to go
No such
down
thing.
to 100. They
Yeah.
want to go bigger. It's like a kid with a bicycle. A kid doesn't want to go to a smaller bike. He always wants a bigger bike.
Of course.
A
Yeah, exactly.
small
Yeah.
bike gets thrown away. Small. They don't want 100s. They'll
Yeah.
take a 110. So we're missing the boat on some of this, and the manufacturability of things over 100 inches gets a little bit
Hmm.
dicey. And the 100-inch pieces you've seen in our market are expensive.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. What do you want to take a look at next, Joel? I've got a whole bunch of different images here that you sent me over.
Well, let's take a look at our original chart put together for CEDIA in the transition from SD to HD. It's a viewing distance chart. And back in those days, we were building projector rooms, and we were working on the standard we talked about last time, the CEB 23. So you should have a chart that shows things. Ah, there we go. Let's pull this up. And this was how we rectified getting a big screen into a normal everyday home. And you've got, red zones, green zones, yellow zones, and depending upon the viewing angle, you can make it a little bigger yet. Grow it some.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if everyone could see it out there, but jumping in on the left side, you've got your viewing distance in screen widths, which is what we did for years and years. And we took that right from the screen manufacturers and the projector manufacturers, because we always measured screens to lenses in screen widths. So the
Hmm.
zoom of the lens would always be in screen width. And that's how we describe things. And it got a little dicey as we started getting to multiple aspect ratios, but that's what we did back then. We learned to change it. But the key here is on the right side, field of view. The horizontal field of view in degrees. And I'm a big screen fan. Jumping into IMAX, you're in the 50s. And even in the bad seats, IMAX theater in the 50s, if not larger.
Hmm.
Look where the green lines first start. You're looking at about 33 degrees.
Right.
And based upon calibrators, watching content, looking at patterns, and
Hmm.
determining where a safe distance was in 720p and 1080i, both of which have their advantages and disadvantages. Neither of which were acceptable. 1080p started to be acceptable, but the 1080i and 720p, long poor story, neither one was acceptable. 1080p, this was 33 degrees worth of comfort. The
Right.
artifacts weren't so bad, the MPEG problems weren't so bad, the pixelization wasn't so bad. It was a nice picture. But people like me, I'm happier sitting, maybe 47 to 48 degrees. And it was
You're
a
in here
perfect
somewhere.
movie that was acceptable. Other than that, I was looking at some issues from time to time. So we use this as a guideline as to how big a screen I can put in how big a room and how close you can sit to it.
Sure.
Because function of a big screen is not a function of the size of the screen. It's a function of the size of the screen paired with where do you sit.
Where do you sit? Yep. Exactly.
So, as you're seeing in your system, you're running a nice projector right now, sitting reasonably close to a pretty small projection screen, gives you a
Yeah.
pretty big viewing angle.
Yeah. It's addicting, especially at 235.
Even at 178, if it's that size, it's involving. And that's
Yeah.
where we get to the point where we're into the movie, we're feeling it, it's emotional,
Right.
and that, being immersed in a large image is what we've always wanted.
Yeah.
We've been looking at it for a while. Now, jumping in from here, we started to see problems with the Panasonic, even though we didn't see pixels. Now, there's something in the way of a different resolution I showed you some pictures of. I sent you those.
Let me take a
Vernier
look here.
resolution. So we started to take things apart, even though we were seeing,
Is it this one?
nope,
Okay. Stand by. Sorry. Let me get the right one here.
that actually is a manufacturer's one.
Maybe
He
it's
read
this
the
one.
chart. Keep on going, nope. There
Nope.
should be some text in there on vernier resolution.
Oh, how about this?
There we go. This got us, because we're sitting here with some people in a luxury apartment, part of the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach. It's a guy's beach house. He's got one on the Intercoastal, but the beach house was in the hotel. And it was also a nice guest house because it was a 4-bedroom condo in the Breakers Hotel with the full benefit of the hotel. So it's a nice little guest house across the street from where you keep your boat. But this was where we put the 103, and we positioned him kind of carefully to make sure he couldn't see pixels on test patterns, and bolted it all together, put things there, and he didn't like the system.
Mm.
And test patterns look fine. And watching sports, he says, I can't stand it. He goes, I see the net on tennis, it's breaking up on me. I look at the
Oh,
ball, it's moving. Every time I look at basketball, I see not diagonals, I see stair stepping. You told me to stair step. He's accusing me. You said what a stair step is, now I see it, I can't stand it.
sure.
And this was the beginning of a study for us that came into what happens with cortical processing, our vertical resolution, and the eye's ability to see artifacts in broken lines and line pairs that we would consider under traditional Snellen eye charts to be beyond the minimum perceptible differences. It's not beyond the perceptible difference when you're watching
Right.
a basketball court.
Sure.
It's broken up. So artifacts take us into hyperacuity. This is where some of the press that's talking about, well, you don't really need 4K, you don't really need 8K, and they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because basic, simple Snellen eye chart test that the doctor gives you does not take into account the ability of the brain working with the fovea, the very complex part of our eye where we see most of the resolution. It's a very small part of the eye that actually sees high res.
Mm-hmm.
When you're looking at text on a page, you're looking at 2 or 3 words, then you scan like a tank turret. You don't
Right.
see high resolution. Anybody watching the screen, if you look at the outside of the screen, in your peripheral vision, don't move your head, don't move your eye. Concentrate in the center, see the outside of the screen. You can tell the aspect ratio, you can tell the color, but you're seeing it in soft, fuzzy places. You can't read it. To read it, you got to scan with the words. So our very fine vision is in a very fine number of degrees, somewhere between 2 and 10, depending upon which medical person you're dealing with. This type of resolution is the reason we see artifacts, even though the viewing distance by traditional old-fashioned tests would do it. So let's go take a look at the viewing distance recommended by the ITU. And you should have a copy of the front page of the ITU 2020 report. That one, there we go. This is where it all began. So this is 2012. And vertical resolution, hyperacuity, all this was looked at very critically by 193 countries worth of engineering. And let's take a look at the chart right from this book that shows us the new way of measuring it, which is screen heights, not widths. And all of a sudden, when I've got screen heights, it is aspect ratio agnostic. And can you take us down to the part of the chart that's 1920 by 1080? Just highlight that.
Yes.
And if you look at the viewing angle, horizontal field of view, and in ITU terms, we talk about optimal viewing distances. I have to reread that because optimum to engineering groups may not be optimum to a person. Optimum is how close you can sit before the system fails. So looking at 1080p, let's blow it up a little bit. 1920, 1080.
It's right here.
We're off a degree 10 years earlier. So our study of calibrators, high-end customers, manufacturers came up with 33, ITU comes up with 32. They consider that to be optimum. Inside that, when you go to 38, 40, 45 degrees, you're gonna fail. So what hadn't changed in a decade? Us.
Yeah, we're still the same.
We're still the same critters.
Right.
Regular acuity, hyperacuity, we still see the same thing we saw back when we did SD to HD, but now we've got options. So looking at that, let's go highlight the 4K one. Now we're looking at 1.5 screen heights. And Jason, you've been in these sessions where we take a whole bunch of people and we get them close to a 4K TV set at 1.5 screen heights. And what's the horizontal field of view there? 38, 40, 21, 60?
58 degrees.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
At 1.5 screen heights, we've had a lot of people rebel. Whoa, too close, too close. Get me further back.
Mm-hmm.
Give it 10 minutes, watch part of a movie, and all of a sudden, it can be acceptable. There's a time where you get acclimated to it, but if the artifacts aren't there, and the contrast definitely is filling a larger field of view. The intense color of the P3 color we have now, it may not be 2020, but it's not 709, it's P3.
Yeah, it's way better.
It's
Yeah.
way better, way better.
Yeah.
That combined with the bit depth, combined with the native contrast of the panels, combined with the viewing angle, is an involving immersive experience.
Joel,
And yeah,
how many times this has happened to me a lot in the past 2 or 3 years now, but speaking of wide color gamut, how many times have you seen a color on the screen and said, oh my gosh, I've never seen that color on a TV before? It's happened to me so many times. It's crazy.
it just goes to show that the people who are making the movies are learning how to use the new tools.
Right, right.
We talked
Very
about
cool.
that, when we watched a few movies together
Oh,
in
sure.
IMAX, and then we saw it in Dolby Vision, and we went, oh, whoa, the Dolby Vision took me
Whoa,
back.
wait a second.
I mean, I want the size of the IMAX, but I want the dynamic range and the color gamut of the laser projector.
That's what, that's what we've all been chasing for all these years, is big, but also impactful and dynamic. And it's like up until now,
Right, dynamic, colorful screens.
either or, but now we can
That is
get
right.
both now.
Now go look at that 4K 1.5 screen height. So we
Hmm.
started playing with this, and no one would sit there normally.
Hmm.
So I do remember this years ago with my dear old mom, whose TV broke, and I'm on the road in about 2 days, so I have no time to buy her one, but I've got a 65-inch. So I take it to her bedroom at home, and she looks at it on the way in when I've got two guys carried. She goes, no way, no, 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 that's huge, don't want it. I said, yeah, Mom, I'll be back in a week. I'll change it. It's a
Yeah,
TV. It'll make a picture. It'll be
right.
fine. So she was elderly at that point. We got her a little hearing aid type thing with the ears on it, and she could see it fine and hear it fine. And I got back from my trip, and I called her up. I said, okay, we'll change it out. She goes, well, don't trouble yourself. I think it'll be okay. I said, you don't like it? She goes, I've kind of gotten used to it, and
Yeah,
don't trouble yourself. I can deal with this. I go, I got a smaller one. No, I'll take this one.
yeah,
So
I'll keep it. Yeah, yeah,
give it a
yeah.
geriatric octogenarian, looked at it after a week and said, I like it. The
Paul,
first glimpse was not my bedroom. No, too big.
Paul has a real simple question to this, Joel. He says, "Are you saying we need to be closer? Does that mean that we can go further back? With audio, we need to be further back." So he's thinking of the balance between sitting in the right spot for audio and video. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just go bigger screen.
Just
The
get a
audio
bigger
works
screen.
just fine.
Yeah, you can stay in your
And never the
spot.
twain shall meet. This is not for the faint of heart. To make the audio work well and the video work well requires a big screen. And
I like it.
we've been working on this for quite some time with the CEB 22 guys.
Hmm.
And subjectivity, we've talked about like where people want to sit in theaters and the baseline. We're training our clients little by little. If I've got a 55 in the bedroom and I'm putting in a 75, they like it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You tend to, yeah.
And the first glimpse, and of course, the beauty of it is right now the 55 cost way back when was expensive. The 75 and
Yeah.
77s cost the same. So
Hmm.
spending the same money for a 77 that you spend for a 55. That's been delightful. People are having a good time with that. That's easy.
Right.
But getting them used to that is intriguing. And so 1.5 we were successful with, and I remain successful. So I'm taking big screens, putting them in bedrooms. And cabinets are a problem. Get rid of the cabinet. Okay,
Yeah,
there are a few people who make wall coverings that drop down in front of the TV set, make it artwork, and I love that.
that's
For the
cool.
designer crowd who doesn't want to see a big picture, drop a picture in front of it, press a button, something moves, TV opens up, the artwork's gone, TV's on.
Yeah, it's
And
magic.
this became intriguing. Now, when we've been experimenting, and you and I have done this together with the 8K viewing distance, let's go back to that
Hmm.
ITU chart again. And we have failed miserably to get people to sit next to a TV set that's 65 or 77 inches at 0.75 screen heights, which means you're almost landing on the screen surface.
Hey
The,
guys, it's cool, cool movie.
the comfort zone there has been zero. I've
Yeah,
yet to find a human who could sit there. So I'm sitting there looking at this and saying, this is not for our time now, but there will come a time. But
sure.
this also, with 8K, you can be right on top of the thing and you're fine.
Hmm.
And we
You,
don't have any systems right now that are affordable where we could do that. And the ones we have are not 8K yet. But we did have some experiments with this years ago, and this became urban legend, but it actually was a system. There's a picture of a place in Europe. It's an old castle that's very colorful, weird aspect ratio. See if you can
yep,
pop that.
let me pull that one up for you. Give me just a second.
And this was a system in a mega mansion, a serious one, We had 3 rear projection systems edge blended to each other. So it became a very wide screen picture. There was 0 content for this. Not yet.
Should be.
It's a
I've got it
castle,
here.
and it's red and yellow and very colorful.
Should be. Oh, where did that one go? Give me a second. I'll pull it up.
Okay,
Keep going.
so what we had here was someone who wanted wallpaper. This was 60-foot wide TV set in the early days with 3 chip DLPs, projection system, and it filled the wall of the mansion. And behind it was basically an industrial room with these 3 things running. We had a significant number of channels of audio. I wasn't involved in that, but this was really immersive audio before there was immersive audio. And the budget here was not really an issue. We actually had to send people out to shoot custom shots on this. But button A could be Sintra in Portugal. Button B could be Yosemite. Button C could be Moonscape. You have whatever you wanted, whatever imagination you could have. There were no real native video shoots for this, no movies, but this was wallpaper. And when we started looking at this was a magnificent thing because you could have whatever you wanted as a picture window onto the world you created. So shooting these things was a bear. Setting it up was not for the faint of heart. It gave us our first glimpse of what we're looking at now. There we go. Strange aspect ratio.
Very. Yeah, that's a really weird, wide, very, very wide.
That's what it took to fill that. 3 screens side by side. So you could put that together. You crop things out of a large sensor and you shot with a custom viewfinder to fill the screen. And people were running around the world on his dime videoing these things and then go in a Crestron system, put it up and take whatever scene you're in the mood for. It was spectacular.
Yeah, very cool.
Absurdly. It was more than most people's luxury homes, but it was an experiment in time and space, and it gave us a clue. And let's go take a look at actually an image I sent you from Sony's website on viewing distance. And I started just researching for the course we're writing for the online course. Who's recommending this? Because the ITU recommends it. Does a TV set manufacturer recommend it? And you and I have both worked with the engineer who put some things together. Here we go. 1.5 times. And they've got a good little graphic. Where should you sit on our 4K TV sets? Right out of the ITU book. Now that's dramatically closer than most people are used to sitting, which means one of 2 things. Move the couch or buy a bigger TV.
Yeah.
And the odds of moving the couch and moving the bed, and they'll just buy a bigger TV set.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had one client sitting here, and he had a 65, and he bought the 100-inch.
Big jump.
It wasn't a spousal approval factor; it was a spousal shock factor. It's like, you're doing what? Where in my bed? Let's watch. And it was one of these things that was problematic until we turned it on. And this is a house with a good theater.
Yeah.
It's a house with a media room. And the bedroom TV looked like a 42-inch. But this now had a similar viewing angle to the media room and a similar viewing angle to the theater. And once it was on, it was instantaneous. Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That's okay.
I'll take it.
I'll take it. No, they already took it, but it was simply a question of whether he and the TV were going to get thrown out of the house. And the spousal approval factor was 0 until it got turned on. It was fun.
That's cool.
So jumping into this now, if we're looking at the 0.75, Jason and I were in Amsterdam together looking at a rather large Sony screen. Do you have a picture of that one there someplace?
Yeah.
This was basically a Lego assembly piece. There we go.
That one.
And this is whatever size you want.
Yeah.
Comes in your choose, build it, put it together.
One from each show here. So one from Infocom and one's from CD and one's from ISE. But they had at one of the shows they had a pretty big one, and at the other show they had a really big one.
Well, the one in Amsterdam was 60 feet.
Yes. Yeah. Just monster.
And the nice part about this, it's 1,000 nits, B3 color.
Right.
And at 15.5 feet, it's 4K.
Yeah.
Every panel you add onto that is higher resolution. So it's whatever aspect ratio, whatever resolution you want. But jumping in, they made an 8K version of it.
Yes.
And when you're sitting as close as we were to that, now we're talking wall-size TVs.
Mm-hmm.
So we were sitting in New York at the launch of a new product, and we had a film team there. Yeah, actually, interesting bunch of guys who showed us an HDR clip of a movie that was going to launch in about a month, and it was used to show off a new model of TV. So the movie was spectacular looking. The HDR was wonderful. And then I found out that in between sessions, the team wanted to have lunch with my friends and myself, which I was delighted. You don't get to sit in the film crew that often.
Yeah.
And they said, we're very concerned about what this is going to look like at home. And I said, well, what you just saw at the demo of the TV is what you're going to see in a calibrated system at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we understand, but what's it going to look like in 2 or 3 years? Where is screen size is going? And sort of hinted, I said, let's discuss this after the second drink because it's going to be a tricky discussion. So the question is not the right question. It's not a question of screen size. So what's the environment? I said, well, it's a question of room size.
Mm-hmm.
We're not planning on TV screens of any given size. We're planning on filling the wall.
Right.
That's where we're going. So whether it's going to be flexible OLED or whether it's going to be little micro LEDs or whatever technology we can do with lasers, I want to fill the wall. And now we're looking at inside 0.75. At wall size, it's applicable.
Mm-hmm.
And what we had on that big system we put together, it was intriguing because the doorbell rang and one of the panels was a doorbell.
That's cool.
One of the panels, half of it became a baby cam because we've seen this thing before. You're watching a movie and you've got a young family, and I had this in my house for a while. I think I heard the baby. I think you heard the baby. And so you pause the movie, you go up, you check the baby, you wake the baby up, now the baby's crying, and you messed up everything. But I want a baby cam. In my area, we didn't have baby cams. We woke up the babies with dumbbells. So now you have a baby cam, and you go, oh, so cute, and go back to the movie.
Yeah.
So I could have the baby cam, I could have an email flashing, I could have, like Minority Report and sci-fi movies, I could have 14 different things running with gestures, and maybe I fill it with wallpaper, and maybe I fill it with the movie, or maybe I'm multitasking. And what strikes me as a generational shift that is strange, because we've seen multiple generational shifts. The first one I saw between myself and my kids was consumption of content.
Mm-hmm.
I look at a movie on TV and watch about a minute and a half of it and realize I already saw it. I forgot, but now I saw it, and I go look for something else. Where my kids would basically wear out the pits in the discs watching it for the 17th time.
Yeah.
And I do think if I hear the theme song from Frozen one more time, some part of my brain is going to implode. But the kids memorize the scripts, they memorize everything, they watch the movie ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Now, next generation after that, I'm watching them again. They're watching the same movie for the 87th time. But
Mm-hmm.
on one hand, they're texting a friend, and the third screen in their room, they're doing a game.
Right.
So they're watching 3 things at one time. They've got 2 portables, 1 fixed. That's ridiculous. I want 1 big one.
Yeah.
And dedicate part of the real estate to it. And you see my system. My
Yeah.
monitor is a very large TV.
Sure.
And I've got 4 things up on screen at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't like using 3 computer monitors. The gap drives me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But I really want a bigger monitor because I want to do more things at once. Now I'm working on 2 or 3 presentations at the same time and mixing and matching. I want to be able to click and drag easily. So this type of future, what we're looking at with the bigger screens, I think that's going to be where we go one day.
Joel, Paul has a question, and it's about getting signal to these ultra large displays. He says, if we'll be filling the wall, would one fiber be able to handle this? And I think so, right? Because fiber and bandwidth, it's all about the delivery system. So if we're looking at HDMI 2.1 at 48 gigs, fiber, that's really what
we should be fine.
We need fiber for that kind of stuff.
Most of the time, what we've been looking at in content has really been 24 and 32 gig.
Right.
I'm not seeing 48 yet. We're going into 10K, 120.
Yes.
We'll go beyond 48.
Right.
If we get 444, but the odds of consumers ever getting 444 deliverables are nil.
Yeah,
I don't
for
see
sure.
it happening in foreseeable future.
Yep, agreed.
What I do see happening, and because we're going to be in mourning because our coming out party for 128K has been postponed, and that was the Tokyo Olympics.
Oh, yep.
And it's going to be eclipsed by the launch of the PlayStation and the Xbox. So the acid test for what we're going to want in the future is going to be done in the gaming industry first, and then we'll crash and burn on the rest of the systems where we didn't cable them properly. But 48 should take care of most of what we want for the foreseeable future. And if I'm going to be breaking up pixels, I'm going to need the equivalent of the video wall software for these big screens for the times when I want to insert the baby cam or the doorbell or what's going on. And this is going to be complex programming. We're going to need very good mapping, which we don't have in most of the video wall systems. You've played with a few of them. They're kind of crude, and we're not doing a good job of mapping things on there, but we're also selling a minuscule number of them. It's not like the TV business where we do a couple 100 million a year. And if you look at what's happening with processing now versus standalone processing years ago, I mean, what comes inside some of these TV sets in AI power and interpolation puts to shame the standalone processors we had for 20 grand not too many years ago. So if we can do that, and right now, what we're doing in some TVs is tone mapping, local area dimming, local area blasting, because we're doing what dynamic HDR does synthetically, and sometimes doing a very good job of it. They're a couple of frames behind, but you know they're doing a good job of it. So we've got good processing. We can do mapping on big screens one day. When the demand is there, we'll be there.
I remember when I first started getting really into nice TVs and video systems, you know, we're talking like late 90s, early 2000s. I always remembered hearing about like, oh, you got to get a scaler, you got to get a scaler. You know, so guys were running out and buying a separate box that was thousands and thousands of dollars, and now it's just a scaler.
Make it tens of thousands of dollars for a good one. But the pioneer in that was Eve Isabel Ferrugia with Ferrugia Labs.
Right.
And they literally were 20 grand and change. But you plugged it in, and I actually took one back from CES, a product he called the Quad.
Yeah.
And you know, line doubler wasn't really a good name, because if you took 480 and you put a line doubler on it, you had 480.
Yeah.
You had P, not I, but it was still 480. Right. This one actually doubled that. So you go to the quadrupler. And he had a very difficult client. He flew me to the west coast of Florida, not far from where your place is now. And he said, just put it in the system on Sunday and do the demo for me, because he's one of my favorite people. He's in the biz. I think he'll buy it if he sees it. And just put it in the system, show it to him, and then ship it back to me on Monday. But show what it looks like. So I ended up putting in a system, and this was a double stack of projectors, so it wasn't such a simple thing to do in those days.
Oh, yeah.
And we put it together, and the line structure disappeared. The picture was physically, measurably brighter, as well as being smoother, and the motion artifacts were dramatically better. Not gone, of course, it was still 1080i and 720p. And this little guy took a look at it, and in about 3 minutes, he changed a number of different programs. He goes, Eve's right. It's better. Yeah. Definitely better. I'll take it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'll have him ship you one. He goes, no, that one right there. I'll take it.
I want it. Yeah. Yeah.
He goes, no. He goes, that's mine. I'll take it. And I said, well, you can't really do that because it's not mine to give you. He goes, you're right. It's not yours. It's mine. I'm keeping it.
I'm telling you. I'm trying to tell you.
I got to take it home. He goes, no. You put it in. I like it. I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
And I was protesting against a brick wall. He just said, look, you know, get out of here now. You're done. Here, take some money, threw money at me, leave it here. I'll buy it on Monday. And I'm looking at a $24,000 box, and I'm panicking. He goes, look, you just get out of here. I'm going to have serious damage to you if you touch that thing. Just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Because he sent a check out, it was fine. But that's typical of a high-end client. They saw something better in the system, liked it, and he wasn't letting me take it out of there.
Right.
It was a better thing. And we still have that today. We've got powerful toys. People are happy. They don't want to see a demo. They just want it installed.
One of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit about today, Joel, is aspect ratios. And this is something that's I've always been interested in aspect ratios, and always thought it was fascinating how, you know, these different directors and cinematographers and directors of photography, they can go as wide as they want. And one of the things that I've noticed, especially having an OLED now for 3 or 4 years, you know, putting an OLED into a dark room with a black wall behind it, the bars disappear, and I love that to death.
Well, they have black bars.
Yeah, right. And
they have gray bars. And they don't have artifacts. They're black bar. They go.
Right. And going forward now, I think that's just all we're going to see from now on, especially with the introduction of really, really good local dimming and micro LED and continuation with OLED. You know, if you do a black wall or if you have the room set up just right, or a masking screen, of course, in a projection system, you can eliminate the bars. So I wanted to just kind of bring up so everybody could kind of see. I found this interesting. This was just a sort of a quick look at just different aspect ratios throughout the years for some different movies. One that I realized recently, I didn't even realize that it was commonly used, was this one right here, 2.20 to 1. I had popped in Samsara, one of the Ron Frick films, onto the JVC projector that with the 235 screen, and it wasn't lining up quite right. And I did 10 seconds worth of Googling and found out that that movie was actually 220.
Did you
So
find anything in you find anything in 166? Pretty
Well,
common
yeah,
on
yep,
the other side of the pond.
right.
166 was in fact the 178 aspect ratio, which made
Hmm.
no sense to anybody in the film world, because if you look at the multitude of film aspect ratios, and we used to cover more of this at the sessions than we do
Sure.
today, there was a multitude of film aspect ratios, none of which were 178.
Yeah,
There was
none.
plenty of 166 on the British side and plenty of
Hmm.
185, and the compromise for 178 was between the Brits and the Americans. So
It was in the middle, right?
178, the ATSC pulled that out of the hat, and it should have been 185.
Yeah.
And two people didn't like that at all. They had a hard enough time with 178. So
Yeah.
185 would have been a much better choice. But right now, you don't see movies being made in 178. You see TV shows being made,
Yeah.
sporting events being made, and wider than that is now common. Most of the blockbuster movies are not 185.
It was
Most
funny. I
of them.
was when I first got the 235 screen up, I was going through all of my movies back here behind this TV, and I was like looking for all the 235 and 240 movies, and a couple of them I was actually surprised that they were not in 235 or 240, like Pacific Rim. I forgot that that wasn't. Avatar, we've always known is 16 by 9. So as I was like frolicking through my collection for those first couple of nights, I kept having a couple movies pop up, and I was like, oh yeah, that movie's not 235. It was
No,
pretty
the
funny.
answer is simply what we did in the standard. The aspect ratio shall match the movie.
Right.
And the companies that are really doing it right, if I look at the people at Kaleidoscape, we keep a database of that. You put the movie in and it talks to your screen and it
Hmm.
puts your screen in the right aspect ratio. As much as I think my multiple aspect ratio screen in the house is fun,
Right.
it's a nuisance. I got to pause the movie, press a button, wait for
Hmm.
it to go down. I want that to be automatic. And of course, if you have an OLED, you don't have to worry about it. It's black, but none of the projectors are doing that quite yet. But the laser projector you saw in my system, it does a pretty good job of dimming things when it gets dark. So
Right.
there we've actually got a movable range of where we can go. It's not fixed. It now
Right.
moves, just like Dolby's doing. And we all want that in projection one day. We don't want to be
Yeah.
sitting with a fixed dynamic range in projection.
Yeah.
Ideally, we'll do metadata, but the interpolation of the triplets of the scene to see where it's dark to dim the lasers, it's pretty
Yeah.
impressive right now.
And there's some sets I've seen recently in the past few years with really, really good local dimming that do the same thing if it's an LCD panel. So movie
Exactly.
comes up,
They're
black bars
analyzing the
disappear.
triplets, and this really is AI. It's AI
Yeah.
working for us. We're
Right.
analyzing the movie pixel by pixel, triplet by triplet, figuring out
Yeah.
where to trigger, and processing most times is half art, half science.
Yes.
Because you're talking algorithms that are predicting when you should local area dim. Now, if it's
Right.
a 235 movie, that's easy.
Um, where things are going to get really interesting, I think. Well, actually, I think where things are actually going to get easier in this regard is when you have guys like Christopher Nolan doing multiple aspect ratios throughout the same film. Whereas, in on the JVC right now on the projection system, 235 fills up, the rest of it's got bars on the sides. And obviously, without a masking system that can work instantly and on the fly, that's kind of tough. But now
But
that we're talking micro LED, OLED, things like that, again, like we said before, those bars disappear. It's a non-issue now.
once it's a black bar, it's not an issue. As far as a gray bar, it's an issue.
Right.
But you're still going to have mixes of aspect ratios because if
Sure.
someone's deciding the movie should look differently, what's surprising me, we've been doing this with Aquaman at the sessions we've done together.
Yeah. Yep.
And the chapter we use changes aspect ratios on the fly. And when
Hmm.
you show it on good TVs, people don't catch it.
Right. Yeah.
And the next loop through, I've done this with 200 people at least. Tell me when the aspect ratio changes. And everyone goes, aha, yes,
Yeah.
I saw it. But they didn't see it unless you told them to look for it.
Yep.
Or on the old plasma TVs, it would be annoying when it
All
didn't
day.
fill the screen.
Oh yeah.
So this is serious progress, but contrast remains the single most important part of our picture quality that we look for.
Sure.
And that's just another example of where poor contrast ruins the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're looking at black bars that are gray, and you've got, like we used to have in the old world, a white line at the point where it went from content filling the screen and a gray bar, you had
Yeah.
double lines. You had the white line and you had gray bars.
Right.
So there's no mystery that we had people zooming TV sets, destroying the movies.
Sure. Just to get
And
rid of the
because
bars.
some
Yeah.
of the funniest things ever was someone like Woody Allen who would put something together in a movie that couldn't be panned and scanned. And if you cut up his
Mm-hmm.
movie, you have two noses talking to each other because he
Right.
didn't want his movie being cut. So we've come a long way since the transition from the old to the new. And the 185 to 178 to 240, it's more graceful when we have good contrast ratios.
Mm-hmm.
So these are intriguing. So as we go bigger and better, so we've been talking about better pixels forever, we need enough pixels where we don't see resolution with hyperacuity.
Right.
And I think the acid test for hyperacuity remains 1080i. And you know my version of that. It's the worst thing we did in ATSC. We as
Yes.
Americans caused the blight of 1080i
Yeah.
to visit everyone's home on the planet. And making that look good is a challenge. But
Mm-hmm.
if you've got processing that makes 1080i look good, and your hyperacuity doesn't pick it up, you got good processing in a big system.
Yeah.
720p is kind of soft, but it doesn't wiggle on us. It doesn't
Yeah.
drive you
It
nuts. It
doesn't
just
move
got
around. Yeah.
no resolution. It's a megapixel, if that.
Sure.
So we're looking at good days, but as we see 65-inch TV sets become commodity TV sets,
Mm-hmm.
and we go to the Costco's of the world and you start seeing 75s and a small proliferation of 80s in the chain stores, big screens are normal.
Sure.
And the wonderful thing is you don't have to have the screen in a room the size of a mansion.
Yeah.
Normal everyday rooms can hold 77s, 85s.
You know how when you can tell that those sizes are becoming normal is when you hear the ad on the radio and it's like, come down and buy a new car, we'll give you a free 75-inch TV. Well, okay, well that's when we know that those sizes are now like normal,
Well, the
But yeah,
commodity TVs, but unfortunately, it's like the laptop. The
yeah,
laptop you really want really costs a fortune and always has.
right,
The $800 laptop may have the size screen you want, and it may even say a couple of the specs that you want, but it's not the laptop you want.
right.
The laptop you want's always been expensive. So the TV set you want, it may be an 85-inch or an 88-inch, but it's not the one that's on sale.
But yeah, exactly.
It's the one that there's a waiting list for.
Right.
And on the 88 side, I've got 3 clients around the country waiting for an 88 OLED. They're not just waiting on the shelf for you. So we've got expenses there that are issues, room sizes that are now non-issues,
Mm-hmm.
but supply chain. We're not building enough of those things for the high end. But then again, there's a waiting list for Ferrari. There's a waiting list for lots of things in this world.
Sure.
Good bottle of wine. If you want a good bottle of wine right now and you really know what you're buying futures.
Yeah.
In fact, you got to come back over our side. I got a future just coming in about 2 days. So
Oh,
things I
good.
bought about 6 months ago. But sometimes you just have to step up to the plate for all of your hobbies from time to time. What's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful in our hobby, the dynamic range, the gamut, the dynamic range
Yeah.
having good blacks, so good
Right.
dynamics with good blacks, it's staggering, and affordable, good screen sizes. So these are
Sure.
golden days for us. But this is just a stepping stone for a wall-size TV set. And looking at what I wanted in the room you saw, which is a 2-channel room, I really wanted that to be the flat panel filling the room, and it was about 1.2 mil to the screen I wanted. So either I have to buy tickets, get a better job, or just deal with the 88 and wait another generation or two. But we don't want that. And
Here's
when
the
it comes in little cubes, you can fit it in elevators. It's not a problem anymore.
here was one that I know you saw at ISC. I wanted to kind of give everybody a sneak peek at it if they didn't get to see it. But Samsung had their 535-inch wall size, and this is easily the biggest one I've ever seen, and it was impressive. I mean, they said 1,000 nits, perfect black, and seeing it that big and being able to get that close to it, it was just, it's like this is a whole new thing. This is a whole nother level.
But there's one other consideration we have to learn to do, because this really is a media room system, not just a theater.
Oh,
So
sure.
at Sony Pictures out in California, they're running a crystal LED in the Jimmy Stewart Theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping we do our California session together because we're going to get an invite to go see that.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, for
The
sure.
the audio is a compromise. They want the audio behind the screen, which doesn't happen with the micro LED.
Right.
And in a normal everyday room, because we've seen a couple of these going in, you've got to do a really good job on room light reflections.
Yeah.
You need to control the ambient light in media room to make sure nothing is bouncing off that screen while you're watching the picture.
Sure. Sure.
And I was at an awards presentation where they had a spotlight on me and other
Yeah.
speakers. And the spotlight was reflected beautifully in the LED wall to the point where it was a sharp stick in your eye. You saw the full intensity of the spotlight, and
Mm-hmm.
we ended up using a downlight, which did not really work well for people because a downlight gives you a ghoulish look
Yeah.
under your nose, under your lips. But it was either that or destroy the picture. So
Right.
we're going to have to relearn how to set up media rooms. But right now with big screens, you're already looking at reflections. In the room I'm in right now, if you look at the screen behind me, there's reflection. I use that light only for video calls,
Sure.
but I can't have that light on. Look what's going on behind me. You can't have that light on when you're watching
Oh,
a
yeah.
movie.
No
It
way.
lights
Yeah.
up my face to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a failure on my new media system here for video calls. Canon has new software and it's beta software and it works
Yeah.
fine on every system except the one Jason and I are using right now.
Except for this one. Yeah.
And so if there are any Canon users out there right now and you're doing webcam use, the beta is out for the Canon webcam software. And we'll figure out how to use it in this one, but it turns your camera into a beautiful webcam. And since you
Sure.
can set a wide aperture, you get good bokeh. The out of focus backgrounds are wonderful. Everything becomes a background. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to use it with this system, Jason. But
Yeah. That's good.
on Microsoft Teams, it worked out fine. But being able to turn cameras into webcams and not deal
Mm-hmm.
with the mediocre lens I'm looking at right now in a low contrast system. So
Right.
that's going to happen. So I do think we're going to start seeing after the pandemic more and more people using webcams to talk to their friends, more and more work happening. The
Sure.
Infocom was calling for 65,000 huddle rooms last year. We blew way
Whew.
back that, which is what they
Yeah.
call a teleconferencing room. So that will be changed after what's going on. And you and I have reached a lot of people.
Oh, sure.
The audience on everything we've done has been huge. And I just did one with CDA. We had 382 people on it.
Yeah.
First of
It's
all,
good.
I know where to find people now.
Yeah.
We know who people are. It's much easier to get responses to emails now. We're kind
That's
of
true.
tied down. We're not traveling the way we were. And
Um,
we're learning how to do more of these things.
Joel, we're just about out of time. There were a couple of kind of questions and comments that came in. Ted just reminded, we talked about that 2.20 to 1 aspect ratio that Samsara and Baraka, that's 70 millimeter film. So thanks, Ted, for that reminder.
Yeah.
Paul asks, do you see a future in augmented reality with movie interaction? That's an interesting one.
More in gaming and more in business
Yeah.
than they do in primary entertainment. But I
Yeah.
think it already is fabulous for gaming.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a real estate company using it right now to show you what the 22nd floor and the 5th floor and the 30th floor look like.
That makes total sense in that industry. I mean, that's almost like what it seems like it's made for almost.
We've got furniture companies using it right now. You want to see that couch in your room?
Yeah,
Paint
boom,
companies,
there it is.
what
What
your wall
color?
look like green? What your wall look like? I mean,
Yeah.
these are business applications, but the gaming applications are going to be wonderful.
Right.
And my biggest problem with that has been the low resolution and the motion artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I need 120 for that.
Sure.
And if it's going to be a VR glass in front of my head, I need 10K
Yep.
because I'm seeing pixels and I'm seeing
It's too
motion
close.
artifacts. So
Sure.
throw high frame rate at that. So here it is. We're going to be looking at games this fall at 120. So if you got gamers as clients, make sure your systems are wired properly or you're not going to get that. So it's a repeat of the 4K and a higher frame rate and 4 times the resolution. So the load on the system is there. So Jason, we've been bringing fiber on the road with us for what, 4 years now?
2016 or 17, yeah.
Yeah. And I did have one sales meeting with a bunch of guys and we were talking about going beyond 10.2 gig years ago,
Right.
and they just said, you're never going to need that. So
Yeah.
I walked them over, just for the CES show, I walked them over to 2 camera manufacturers who had 120 cameras right
Yeah.
there. And I said,
Already
that's where
making
you're going 8K 120, so start wiring homes for that. And they looked at me like I had horns on. They
right.
go, the cameras are here. We're
Yeah.
populating the world with 120
Sure.
cameras. And by the way, my Canon camera will do 120.
Yeah.
for webcam. I can't plug it into a system, but the cameras, this is a consumer camera,
Right. Right.
just 5D. It'll do 120. And we're getting into the high frame rates. We're getting into really good looking images in games, home video, telecommunications, webinars, and right now streaming's rocking.
Sure.
I'm looking for a couple of new discs from time to time, but we're in a good spot. We're in a really
Yeah.
good spot.
Joel, the only other question that came in was from Charles. Good question. I've actually seen some webinars from, I think, Trinov, specifically around this exact question. In a micro LED system, where do you put the center channel? Where do the speakers go?
They're running into that at the Jimmy Stewart Theater right now.
Yeah.
And the problem with the one listener is not a problem with one viewer. The problem is if you can't get behind the screen,
Right.
getting ghost images to a lot of people. So we're going to need, some innovations in there, but it's not going to be as good as putting the driver right behind the voice
Right.
on the screen that's got the lips and the driver right behind it. We're in a good place
Sure.
there now. We're going to have to work on these things from time to time. There's no way to work on it with micro LEDs. There's no gaps. These
Right.
things seal pretty nicely.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be a major compromise. That's been the pushback from Sony Pictures. They love 1,000 nits. They don't like the sound.
Yeah.
Now you can make
They're
it
gonna have to
work
figure
in
something out.
you can make it work in 4 or 5 seats with
Yeah.
right in going above and below
Right.
ghost images. But we live with ghost images for the early days of stereo for years and years and years. And it was one of our great mentors in the business, Dr. Floyd Toole, who simply said that stereo is fabulous for one person.
Yeah. Sure.
The reason we went surround sound is to involve the family, because
Yeah.
all of a sudden I can get a real image to a lot of people. So that is a question that will be dealt with one day, but I don't see a perfect solution yet.
I know.
I do like 1,000 nit full size screens.
Sure, sure. And I know for sure I've seen Trinov specifically addressing this in some of their webinars. Joey just chimed in on the chat box and he said their kind of methodology, it sounds like Trinov is starting to put put one above, one below, and let some processing and EQing sort of make it work.
That's what's happening in movie theater in California right now.
Yeah.
And again, it works well for a small number of seats.
Right.
And the processing does a great job, but you can't get 12 seats at home to get a good center channel.
Yeah.
I can get a couple or maybe 4, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a compromise. But then again, A and V have always had compromises. We'll work on that.
Yeah.
But
Great.
there's enough space inside the micro LED one day to do what Sony's doing with the OLED right now.
Yep.
The screen is the speaker.
Make the screen the speaker. Yep.
And that works remarkably well. And they've
Cool.
got 3 channels on the screen right now, but I just want one.
Yep.
But we may need the big video wall to be 5 channels of audio.
Sure.
And if I could do with an OLED right now with transducers behind the screen, that solution will come to play. So I don't see it as a dead end. I see it as an engineering challenge and people will meet that. I'm not an audio guy, but I really want to have multiple channels of my screen shaking the way I'm doing right now with an OLED.
Right. Right.
And you'll need theatrical levels, but we can do that without low frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
So my concern when I first saw an OLED panel is you better have
Where's
a
the
woofer.
base? Yeah.
You better have a woofer. And they were very cagey about that to begin with. Listen, I'm going to see the screen shaking. And they go, you won't. Listen, a woofer? They said, we'll talk later when we launch the products. We first saw the sketches on this. You can't do low frequencies. So we'll get multiple woofers, but the CEV22 group, they're covering this nicely, and Trinov's on that group as well.
Yep,
so
sure,
we've got,
definitely.
That is a talented group. So I'm expecting to see really good advice on the audio side. We'll follow it up. Jason, you're going to be working on the CEV23 with us, as will Matt and everyone else. So the whole team we have working on 28 is going to go to 23 very shortly. So hopefully we've given people a view. And when I talked to the film crew about that, their comment was, we need some bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, go look at the 2.1 specs.
Yeah.
They said, okay, we're good.
We can work with that, yeah.
When people are I'm not going to need 48. Well, they didn't think they need 18.
Well, and, I was also told years ago that I would never need a 2 GB hard drive either. Come on. It's just crazy.
But there was a time in the micro modem days when I didn't think you needed anything beyond 300 baud because I could read 300 baud. What do you need more than that for?
Yeah.
And
well, that's great,
48
guys.
Gig, if you look at the HDMI charts, above 48, they're doing light compression.
Oh,
The
sure. Oh,
trucks
yeah.
we're using in class, we're already
Yeah,
going
we have all
way
those
above
trucks. Yeah.
100 gig. And
Yeah.
light compression will take us there.
Sure. Sure. Guys, that's it for our time. We're right at an hour. Thank you so much for hanging out, everybody. Thank you so much for the interaction and the questions. We had some
Thank you,
great
Jason,
questions
for
here.
letting us come to public. It's a great use of time. I appreciate it. Nice to share
Yes,
all this
yes.
information.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. And guys, we'll get this up on YouTube pretty soon. So if you have any colleagues or anybody who might be interested in checking out the replay, we'll get these things posted up. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much, Joel. Everybody
Take
enjoy
care,
your
man.
weekend. Stay safe and have some fun. Watch some movies.
Be well, be safe, and catch up any binging. See you guys.
Yes. Bye.